welcome to the Weekly Artifact. I'm Justin, and this is my co-host.
My name's Alex.
We're two former creative writing majors searching for meaning in a sea of content. Every other week, we will select one piece of content each, an article, a video, another podcast, that we found particularly interesting and discuss it. As always, our comments are our own and are not associated with any institution.
The show may contain explicit language or themes. See the show notes for specific content warnings. Justin, what do you got this week?
So this week, my article, I don't have the title.
We're only doing this live, it's fine.
The first ever live episode.
Just the two of us anyways in a room. It's fine.
Alright.
We rented out the Marriott, Justin. This is how you're gonna fucking waste our 2 hours.
Hold on. It's gonna take me a second here. You copied and pasted everything but the title.
This is good radio.
No, this is probably good. Okay, here we
That's why it takes me 2 months to do everything.
I make it easier for you. You can just cut out all this, like 3 minutes straight up. So my artifact this week is an article from The New Yorker called "Why Facts Don't Change Our Minds" by Elizabeth Colbert, or perhaps Colbert. I'm not sure the pronunciation on that. But the article is, as the title suggests, just about how our minds do not get changed by new information. And so it kind of goes through a couple of different experiments that have been done to sort of test this idea of whether or not people are willing to change their minds. So the first one, they tested a bunch of students. They get suicide notes. Some of them are real and some of them are fake, and they have to decide which are which. And afterward, they're told that they either did really well or really poorly, not based on how they actually did, just kind of randomly they're told they did really well or really poorly. But then after that, then they reveal to them that actually their scores were made up, and that, so now they no longer know how they did anymore. They only know what they were told, and that what they were told wasn't true. But then asked how they think they actually did, the ones who had been told they did well still believed that they did well, and the ones who were told they did poorly still believe they did poorly. And so a lot of the experiments basically follow a somewhat similar pattern where certain information, either the participants come in with a certain belief or they're sort of given a certain belief and then sort of given new information, or the information is changed and then asked again, they pretty much will believe the same thing coming out of it despite having new information. And sort of what these experiments show is once we have an idea in our heads, regardless of how or why it's there, it sort of sticks, even with the addition of new information. And so what this article talks about, it takes basically an evolutionary psychology approach, which evolutionary psychology can sometimes be good, sometimes not, but but it talks about pretty much how it talks about the way logic evolves in humans rather than sort of being something that's, infallible and handed down from some higher power or something, which I feel like is sometimes how people think about logic, but it sort of evolves and has specific reasons why it evolved that sort of deal with having group cohesiveness. It talks about cooperation and how it can sort of help with that. But that sort of in the world that we live now, where we are sort of trying to use the same logic to, as it says, solve abstract logical problems, or even to help us draw conclusions from unfamiliar data, it doesn't always hold up. And these are examples of different forms of confirmation bias, which is basically what the article is looking at, sort of bears that out. And also, in addition to the sort of confirmation bias, another thing it sort of highlights is what it calls the illusion of explanatory depth, which talks about how basically the experiment was to sort of have people describe how a toilet works, and as the more people tried to describe it, sort of the more they realized they didn't really know exactly how it works, but sort of that we assume that since we use toilets every day and since someone presumably knows how they work, then we probably know how they work too. And it connects that to these larger policy issues. You know, in a similar vein, a lot of people tend to believe they know a lot about healthcare or foreign policy, but if you ask them to actually explain it, then they'll sort of realize that they might actually not know as much as they believe. So one example they gave was the less likely someone was to be able to find Ukraine on a map, the more likely they were to support military intervention. This article sort of came out around the time when there was a lot of controversy over Russia annexing Crimea. And so that's sort of where the article sort of concludes. If there's any hope, it's kind of in being more challenged to explain some of our thoughts. It says, you know, if we or our friends or the pundits on CNN spent less time pontificating and more trying to work through the implications of our policy proposals, we'd realize how clueless we are and moderate our views. The article, I think there are some issues with it. Like I said, even that sort of last line I read, I'm not sure. I'd be kind of curious what the author sort of meant by moderating our views. I'm not sure that necessarily talking through issues will lead to what some people might call more moderate views, but perhaps she just means if there's an issue you're not informed on, maybe on that one you'd be more willing to take more information in. But I think it's just like a good jumping off point for thinking about how to change people's minds and like why people tend not to, I guess.
Well, when I read things like this, well, fuck, what if we're wrong, Like what if Reagan was right? I don't know, right? Like, what if the facts support, sort of like aggressive fascist conservatism or something like that? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't think that's the case, but that's the point, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely, I think there's like two sort of paths to sort of take with this discussion. One is sort of that path you just outlined, which is what are the implications for sort of our own worldviews and how do we know they're right? And then I guess the other one would just kind of be like, well, is our own sort of podcast doing anything different that could somehow change minds, or are we just, is this just a pointless endeavor, I guess? Well, I mean, we know it's a pointless endeavor.
I was going to say, inherently, anything I do, I assume it's a pointless endeavor. And I haven't made it abundantly clear on like any recorded part of this podcast. I'm exclusively here to shitpost and talk with you, who is no longer and stay with me. So I have no responsibility or expectations to anybody else. Don't vaccinate your children. Do vaccinate your children. That was it. Please, for the love of God.
But yeah, I guess that's sort of like what I was pointing to with that line about moderating our views with more information is I think it depends how you sort of want to define what is correct or not. But I think there are positions that are correct. And so I guess what I mean specifically is like, if what you value is, trying to prevent people from pain and suffering and death, then I don't think you could really make an argument against like, universal health care or something. Like that's going to give the most people health coverage or something like that. But, if you only value making sure that, people are able to become CEOs and make $1 billion, then I guess you might, privatize health insurance still. But yeah, I do think once you sort of set the terms of what you're valuing, I think it is still possible to know that you're correct about something, even though if you're not correct, it might be kind of hard to get out of it. But I think if you know what you're trying to do and you do enough research, I think it is possible.
Yeah, well, I mean, and they talk about sort of like why the scientific method sort of like withstands all this, because even if you have zero reason to sort of confirm what another person in another laboratory says, like theoretically the methodology will succeed over any sort of squabbling or anybody being stuck in place. And so, like, I mean, you can have statistics and you can have reactions and reports and information that says, like, the effects after like a certain legislative piece, you know, was enacted. But it's like, it's harder to sort of, I think that just any sort of amount of murkiness you can throw in there, like, will make it, well, that's just fucking fake news, liberal bias, fucking bird dirt, like, you know, just like shit like this. Like, I mean, even bills that like are actively failing, like, I mean, something that I like more like invested in is like the Sesta anti-trafficking like bill that just like fucked over sex workers for the last like 2 years. And now like we know, because there's been a bunch of reports from like independent organizations saying this bill sucks ass, and like the Congress just like passed a thing to like do their own study to see if it's bad or not. Like, you don't need it. We got it. Like, I don't know. It's just like shit like that. Like, the scientific method can't be sort of, you know, 1-to-1 with sort of a social, societal welfare is not going to be as sort of able to be navigated through the scientific method. So it's harder even still to prove something like universal healthcare as like the better option. I don't know. It's just like shitty. It's a pointless endeavor, Justin, as you mentioned prior.
I think we know that science is not infallible just based on the fact that science is always sort of revising itself, which is sort of the point, you know, it's supposed to. I don't think any scientist would tell you that science is infallible and perfect. I think the point is to constantly be gathering better data and coming to better conclusions, although it of course like wants to be always correct. And so like a lot of that, how the data gets gathered a lot of times will influence you know what the conclusion you come to is. And the scientific method's kind of like a way to try to, you know, fight against this, but even that is maybe not 100% correct. Like the article says, providing people with accurate information does not seem to help. They simply discount it. Appealing to their emotions may work better, but doing so is obviously antithetical to the goal of promoting sound science. And so like the implication being that science is the opposite of emotion, and in some ways I don't totally disagree with that, in the sense of, I think in broad strokes I think you can draw distinctions, but I do think, particularly depending on what kind of science it is, a lot of emotion does go into the data gathering, but also even just thinking about how certain things get funded and what experiments are allowed to sort of be conducted too. I think the article sort of is a little bit too dismissive of the idea of sort of like emotional appeals, which I guess I do think tend to be more effective than logical appeals, although
Sure.
Despite what college freshmen will write in all their papers. Not that I necessarily know anything about that, but
Local freshman destroys professor with facts and logic.
It is like interesting though. I think people really do, I think, have this belief, and I don't know where it comes from, but that facts and statistics and stuff like that is the most persuasive, and if they just pile up enough facts and link to enough articles that they will have proved their point or whatever, when really I think not just emotional appeals but stories and narratives are what kind of draw people in to one side or another. And I think kind of once you're drawn in, then you can sort of like support that view with additional facts and statistics. But if anything, because there's, you know, 3 main ways to persuade, which are like facts, emotions, and then just sort of the source, like if people like respect the source. And so I think particularly like if it's like your friend or someone telling you a story, I think that's going to be more persuasive than any sort of facts, even though people tend to rank it the opposite and put facts first for whatever reason.
The rarely talked about 4th option is just beat the shit out of somebody until they agree with you. But I guess if you want to take the cowards way out and only mention the first 2, that's fine. I wouldn't blame you. You're like the rest of the fucking pigs.
All right, Alex. Well, what is your artifact this week?
So mine's article from Vulture that I have readily available at the top. So
as did I. I don't know what you're talking about.
Bong Joon Ho won't direct a. Nope. Damn it. Son of a bitch! I copied the wrong article because let's read the other one. Nope. Well, that's my own fault, I guess.
Wow, that was a perfect cell phone.
talk too much shit to lose, and that you know what only happens when you do that. God damn it! God damn it!
That one
I gotta
has to
keep it
stay
in, right?
Yeah.
I gotta keep. Well, okay, but that's the thing then, Justin. Then there has to be a setup for that then too. I mean, it's not gonna be a full 3 minutes, but it's gonna be a little bit. God damn it! Fuck me. That's what this podcast is made on. It's the bread and butter of this fucking piece of shit. The article also by Vulture is Bong Joon Ho's Dystopia is Already Here by Devin Ivey. Nope, by E. God damn it! I knew it! I copied the wrong author from the last one. Relax. By E. Alex Jung. This is a fairly long article, in-depth article about. It follows the author and the director on sort of a press circuit for Parasite, and they talk about. Well, first it starts off with the sort of fight that Bong Joon Ho had with Harvey Weinstein. Shout out with the release of his film, one of his earlier films, Snowpiercer. The opening line is like the standoff between Bong Joon Ho and Harvey Weinstein over the U.S. cut of Snowpiercer had all the hallmarks of a scene. The director might shoot himself, high drama, the Korean auteur versus the bullish American, philosophical questions of artistic integrity in the time of mass consumption, gallows humor. And so it talks about, the sort of Snowpiercer as a film, it comes off sort of like a slick action Hollywood movie, but it has revolutionary themes, the class rebellion set in a sci-fi dystopia on a train, led by the Captain America actor Chris Evans himself. Even though despite its blockbuster appeal, Snowpiercer languished in limbo in the U.S. after the Weinstein Company bought the distribution rights in 2012. Instead of giving the film the immediate release, though, Weinstein demanded changes. He wanted to cut 25 minutes. He wanted more action and, quote, more Chris Evans. And, Bong Joon-ho talks about how he never needed to do a quote-unquote director's cut. It was always just his movie, and that's sort of what he sends out. And, I've never done any editing I didn't want to do, but, Weinstein's nickname is Harvey Scissorhands, which, there's probably a joke in there somewhere. And, he took pride in his ability to edit films, and he said he'd watch the movie, and he said, wow, Bong, you're a genius, but we got to cut out the dialogue. So... Bong recalls that cutting 25 minutes of that film felt like taking out a major organ. Without the dialogue, the movie became incoherent and character motivation made no sense, which, is how scripts and films and stories work, but that's never going to let Harvey Weinstein tell him no. The industry had been dragged on for months, and Weinstein ended up showing what he wanted edited to a test audience, and with so much dialogue, cut out, viewers felt lost and gave the film very low marks. On the inside, I was happy, says Bong. The score was bad, he said, but Weinstein comes out and goes, the score is very bad, we got to cut more. So, and so he said if it came down to, the movie that Harvey wanted, then Bong would have taken his name off of it and, just wouldn't have let it play. Meanwhile, news of the conflict had leaked to the press, rallying cinephiles and the film stars, including John Hurt and Tilda Swinton, who wanted to see Bong's version preserved. Weinstein backed down with a compromise, though. He kicked the movie down to the company's independent arm Radius instead of a wide release. So it got a limited. Instead of a wide release, it got a limited one. Maybe for Weinstein, it was some kind of big punishment for a filmmaker who doesn't do what he wants, says Bong. But for me, we were all very happy he got his director's cut. His films. Bong is collectively, Parasite's the newest one, but he has a handful of films under his belt, obviously, and some more well known in America than others. But the author writes that his films often center on underdogs fighting against authoritarian forces. In his 2006 breakout movie, The Host, Korean family finds themselves battling a giant river monster born of American malfeasance when a U.S. military official orders a Korean lackey to pour hundreds of bottles of formaldehyde directly into the drain, which did happen in Seoul in 2000, and that creates the beast that terrorizes the city. Memories of a Murder is a scathing black comedy about police incompetence. The Host is an indictment of American hubris disguised as a monster movie. Okja, which is the Netflix movie that he produced after Snowpiercer, is a Totoro-esque escape story until the gears of factory farming begin to turn, and in Parasite, the newest film, The scam ultimately reveals something more insidious, that wealth is always built upon poverty and that the two are locked in constant struggle. The poor wish to be rich, and in order for someone to be rich, someone else must be poor. And, he says, he admits Okja, Snowpiercer, Parasite, they're all stories about capitalism. Before it's a massive sociological term, capitalism is just our lives. And, the author goes on to say, because Parasite is such a distinctly Korean film that it resonates so widely, the trials and exigencies of modern Korean history, Japanese colonialism, the Korean War, military dictatorship have given an entire generation of filmmakers like Lee Chang-dong with Burning and Park Chan-wook with Old Boy, and Bong himself a sense of breathtaking urgency. Korean filmmaking feels prescient today because of its own recent entanglements with authoritarianism and poverty. It is less that Korean films have caught up with modern times than that modern times have caught up with Korean cinema. So, Justin, I guess I'll open with, how many films have you seen? I know you said you've seen Snowpiercer. Have you seen anything else by Mr. Bong Joon Ho?
I saw part of Okja. I didn't really care for it, and I didn't finish it. Although I won't say it was. It sounds like it was so bad that I just stopped watching it. But really, I was it just was on while I was doing other stuff, and then I sat down to watch it because I heard it was good, but then didn't really like it, so then just continued doing other stuff. If I had sat down specifically to watch it, I probably would have finished it. But that's the only other one that I've seen part of.
Yeah, and he talks about in that article too that he Bong Joon Ho specifically sought out Okja because Netflix gave him a guaranteed 100% approval rating for everything, including the final cut and the rating. And so that after the Weinstein incident especially, that he's been very careful about being able to preserve his peace. And I've seen Snowpiercer, I've seen Okja, I'll be seeing Parasite. By the time this comes out, I've seen Parasite 5 times. I haven't seen The Host. I haven't seen Burning by Lee Chang-dong either. But it's not our fault. We're American. If that's too much of a doxy, we can edit it out. But international films are so under the radar all the time. You really truly have to go out of your way to even hear about films like this. And I say even Parasite is it's not under the radar, but it's remarkable how much information is out there for considering the genesis of the film. But then again, I think we're a little more into the film sphere than other people are anyway. So I guess I don't know how much other people know about this movie. I wouldn't be surprised if my mom didn't even know it existed. So
which one? Parasite?
Parasite. Yeah.
I'm planning to see it. Hopefully, eventually. Yeah, I just haven't had a chance to yet. But I did. I like Snowpiercer, and it seems I think I saw that on that Letterboxd app. It's the highest rated movie of all time now.
Parasite is, yeah. It beat out Godfather Part 1, I think.
Yeah. So,
but that comes with the caveat of it's about how the problems with capitalism and rich people, and Obama and Chrissy Teigen and Elon Musk. It's my best favorite movie of the year. I don't understand. I've never seen people say this is a failure on Parasite's part. I've seen people responding to that sign saying well, no, when the movie's about the obliviousness of rich people, the fact that they it still just reaffirms the message. So I will see it, and we can come back to our own opinions when we eventually sit down and just do a movie episode. I think we keep building. I think slightly I have to go back and listen to all these, but we just mention a single movie here and there to talk about later. So eventually we'll just hash all that out, and then we'll never look back. I will never have to read ever again for this piece of shit podcast. I can just sit there and let the pictures do the talking to me.
You never had to read. You could do videos.
What? Wait, what?
A man who doesn't know the intro to his own podcast.
For those who are wondering this, so the author says that he asks what Bong Joon Ho thinks of the fact that no Korean film has ever been nominated for an Oscar, despite the country's outsized influence on cinema in the past 2 decades. It's a little strange, but it's no big deal, says Joon Ho, shrugging. The Oscars are not an international film festival, they're very local. And that's a good thing to remember because, again, as being Americans, it is not an international film festival. It's nothing like that. It's just, here are the movies, and they literally have a category for international films. It is the high mark because we have the Hollywood, but, truly, I have no idea what, the French think of the Oscars. Considering they're French, they probably couldn't give less of a shit.
Yeah, the Oscars suck anyway.
That's very true.
Looking back at all the Best Picture nominations from this last decade, and like half of them like I haven't even like heard of. Like they're just like the most like forgettable movies, and then some of them are just bad.
I remember I was watching a video from Cracked about how the Oscars are shitty, and it was like the Oscars should take place 10 years after the films they talk about come out. Like 2004 Oscars would talk about the 1994 films. It was like, and then it would be the battle between Shawshank and Pulp Fiction would be legendary as opposed to fucking Forrest Gump sweeping.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I mean, well, I think 10 years is probably a little bit too long. I think also sometimes time can distort. Sometimes time clarifies, sometimes it distorts. But yeah, I think, I mean, mainly for me, it's like, I think it's too difficult. Like, because one of the things that happens because of the way the Oscars are set is that everyone just like saves the movies that they think have a chance until like December or whatever, and then like December we see like all the movies that are like supposed to win come out. I mean, and the Oscars are also just kind of corrupt in that like it's not like these people just sit down and like discuss what movies they think are the best. Like there's like a lot of like behind the scenes like favors being done to like get movies to be considered. Even if you waited 10 years, it wouldn't fix all the problems with the Oscars. But I do think it makes sense to wait at least a little bit to just like have some time to actually make sure you've watched all the movies and like had a chance to sit down and think about them for a second.
Since this article came out, obviously, it's been nominated for 6 Oscars for Best Picture, for Best Director, Best Screenplay, Original Screenplay, Best International Film, Best Film Editing, and Best Production Design. So came out swinging for never having a Korean film nominated before. So I mean, we'll see. I don't have zero expectations for the Academy to do anything, but I mean, like you said with the corruption too, you vote like just by yourself, and the people who vote are the only people that have been nominated before. So it's just a real big, literal big circle jerk.
Well, I mean, not literal, but
well,
I mean, I guess it could.
I mean, you said behind the scenes favors, Justin. Stanley Kubrick didn't die for you to tell me that the Oscars aren't a literal circle jerk. So why don't you show some goddamn respect? Keep your eyes wide open, if you know what
I mean. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, the Oscars will definitely be over by the time this episode's out.
We can throw out our picks. I think Joker's going to win every category, including ones it's not nominated for, and that's my Oscar. That's my hot take.
Here, I'll make a real Best Picture nomination prediction here. Let me just look up what they are first. Oh wow, half of these suck, but no, that's not true. But okay, I'm sorry. Okay, I was kidding, but like half of these do actually suck. I don't think Parasite's gonna win because I think they're too racist to let it win, and also it's too much of a critique of capitalism. Same with Joker, though. I think Joker is also, they're probably gonna be like, oh, like,
I mean, the Irishman's probably gonna win.
Yeah,
but it's Netflix though.
Ooh, I didn't even think. But
is Ford versus Ferrari gonna take it?
I'm kind of scared. Like, really, I'm like just praying it doesn't. But yeah, I'm still gonna go out on a limb and say the Irishman pulls it off.
They can't. But it's Scorsese.
Yeah, I'm gonna say if it's not Irishman, I guess it will be Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
I'm gonna fuck around and say top 2 picks are. I hate it. I don't agree. But my top 2 picks are either 1917 or Ford versus Ferrari. I'm gonna go as straight as they can. Well, because what won last year? Last year, Green Book won. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's absolutely 1917 or Ford versus Ferrari. They did their very bad movie that was supposed to be outrageous, and they let it go. So absolutely, we're keeping it straight today.
That's the thing. Like I could see, like Joker would get some of the same people upset, but it would actually be a million times better pick than I already forgot what you said. What, the Green Book? Yeah. So, but yeah, official prediction is Irishman.
I'm gonna say I'll go 1917. I'll go as though just the classic war movie epic. I think that's as good enough as a segue.
There was no segue. All right, so now that we're somehow in the safe room, Alex, what do you have on your mind?
I have on my mind the phrase, the understanding that we don't speak ill of the dead, and how vehemently I disagree with that. And we should absolutely dunk on the dead every given opportunity, with the caveat that you dunked on them before they were dead. Because if you do it after they're dead exclusively, you're a coward. Unless, I guess, you were an authoritarian head of state. Like, I guess if you waited to dunk on Stalin, I can give you a pass. But that's about it. Mostly, I was in the headspace for this because fucking Harvey Weinstein's fucking going for the best actor award himself in this fucking walker up the stairs bullshit, and he's going to like try shit. I don't know if you've seen those photos,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I'm deeply afraid. Not Harvey Weinstein specifically, but maybe. But anybody that was in any you didn't like at all, or like making jokes about them after they die is just why? I always assumed it was because like well, they can't like defend themselves or whatever. But like fuck them, they had their chance. I don't give a shit. They didn't want to have to. If they didn't want to be in a position where they had to defend themselves, they shouldn't have been somebody worth fucking roasting. I don't give fuck that kid. fuck any of them. I don't know. I'm trying to think of like somebody. I mean, there's like. I don't know if this might get edited, but there was kids that I went to middle school with that are dead now. They were fucking assholes then. They died. They probably died assholes.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, it's just it seems to come around like famous figures, and it's always just like, oh, they just died. Like, don't talk bad about them yet. But then it's like, okay, but no one's gonna be talking about them in like 8 months from now. Like, this is the time to say whatever you're gonna say about them, good or bad. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of feel like because I guess the sort of like the counterpoint is always like, well, like if when you pass on, like either like you, depending on their perspective, or like your family or whatever, won't want people like trash talking you or whatever. It's like a time to mourn. But it's like, I don't think I am going to do anything that will lead to a bunch of people trying to trash talk me after I pass
Right.
on. Like,
I literally want my like eulogy to be a roast. Like, I hope you bring the heat. Like you already know what you're supposed to do at my funeral. You already know. Everybody else needs to let it happen. That's their job. If I die, like it'll be. I don't know if it'll be more funny or more traumatizing if I die very soon or if I die super old. I think the best time if I died at like 55 and then you just come in as like another 55-year-old man, just fucking dunk that shit in the ground. But like, if I die like tomorrow, I really want you to do it. Like, I really need you to just flip over my casket.
No, see, I need you to live until I'm like old enough to be like using a walker or something, and just like like ambling up like step by step to your casket, and then just like shaking, like pulling on it. Like, everyone just asking me if I'm okay, like what's going on, like slow, like inch by inch, like dragging it while I'm just like shaking uncontrollably.
Oh my god. I'm crying. Oh my god. Just the fucking set. Then you just walk, and I just want you to like walk out. Don't like leave the walker there. Just fucking strut. Oh my god. It was all a place to get that close. Holy shit. That's so fucking good. Oh. Oh yeah, I guess I don't want my mom to be there when it happens. I'd rather she was gone, and then you can do it. You can do it anyways, but I'll make sure this podcast is out by the time I die. So that you have my full consent. But I don't think my mom needs to see that. My sister would find it funny, I hope, but my mom doesn't need to see that.
Yeah, the two people who are at your funeral would be horrified, but
it's just you and the funeral director just laughing his ass off. He's like, because he's a funeral director, so he's kind of weird. So he's just been waiting for somebody to go to town. Finally, fuck. How much kid gloves we give to fucking Woody Allen? I can only imagine what happens when he dies. But like, everybody, we need to keep that one going. Like, I think we all need to appreciate what the fuck is going on with him.
Mm-hmm.
but it's fine.
Yeah.
Scarlett Johansson will still work with him, so I guess that's something.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting seeing what happens to people who were sort of critiqued on social media. What happens when they die? Because I feel like when John McCain died or something. Like, I mean, there were still people on like social media critiquing him, but like at the height of his evilness, like people weren't on social media. But I feel like when Woody Allen dies, I mean, Woody Allen's also like a little bit before, but a little bit more contemporary. But at some point there'll be people who it's just like you don't even have to like find new things to say about them. You can just like pull up an old tweet or something. It's like, no, like I said this back then too. Like, yeah. I feel like you'll have more, and it won't be as like surprising because people will be like, oh yeah, I remember when that tweet went viral or whatever. Like,
oh, that's the thing. Like, oh my god, I am very well. I remember when one of the Koch brothers died. Everybody's like, all the conservative pundits were like, hey, let's relax, everybody. And I was like, fuck off. What? Like, what are you talking about? What to do? What? He's a billionaire. He doesn't need any help. He's fine. His brother's fine. Hello? I can't even fathom 1% of their wealth. Are you fucking kidding me? And then I'm very nervous for what happens when Trump dies. I mean, I'm not nervous. I know what's going to happen, but like, I just wish it wouldn't. I also hope that like President Bernie in his second term doesn't have to like give like a heartwarming eulogy to Trump. I hope Bernie hears this and just absolutely fucking. I hope Bernie Justins his coffin. Bernie just comes in there and just fucking throws that shit on the ground and says, 4 more years, bitch. We're repealing the 22nd Amendment. I think that's the amendment about the how many times the president can run.
Yeah, also fearful of Trump dying, but Trump has that hate energy that will preserve him for probably a couple more decades.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, that's what keeps us like fresh. Like, we've been pickled this whole time. Mm-hmm. That's just sheer vile in our blood. But that's all I have to say. Go to your local cemetery and egg the graves. I guess is what I'm saying. But only the bad ones. You don't have to speak ill of the dead. You just should when they deserve it. I'm not encouraging it. I'm just allowing it. Justin, what do you want to talk about today safely?
So my safe room this week is stop arguing with 12-year-olds online.
No. They fucked my mom just now. How am I gonna? Can't let them not go unanswered.
So I can't remember who I saw tweet this, but I saw this as a tweet, which is basically just like a lot of these people that you think are the same age as you that you're arguing with online are actually literal children. Mm-hmm. And once you sort of think about it, I feel like this sort of makes sense because I remember being a lot younger online and just posting some stuff that I would never post now. Not that it was like necessarily bad or anything, but just like stuff that like was cringy or didn't make sense, or just like an opinion I happened to hold at the moment, but like wasn't really like correct or like justifiable in hindsight. I don't really spend any time getting in arguments with people online, but sometimes you will look at the replies to a comment or whatever, and I'll just be like, wow, how could people believe this? But then you start thinking about it, it's like they probably don't even really like believe it in the sense that we mean as adults when we say we believe something. This is just like something they heard their parents say when they came home from middle school and were like trying to figure out how to tie their shoes, but we like take it like seriously as if it's like matters in terms of the political discourse or something. I mean, if you are like arguing with these people online, like that's worse because I guarantee like you probably argued with a 12-year-old at some point.
Oh, yeah, for sure. If you take it upon yourself to argue online, you've absolutely hit a
12-year-old. But I think too, this kind of like when people start talking about like the Twitter mobs and all people like piling on, it's like you don't even know that these people necessarily like believe it. It's just like it's just what like little kids do. It's like, oh, everyone's saying that this is like the cool thing to say right now. I'm gonna tweet this out too. It's like some of these people probably are adults, but I'm just saying, like, some of them are kids too, and you just gotta ignore them.
Mm-hmm. That reminds me of, I played a game, I can't remember, just some real passive ass tower building game that was like part of like a group with like a lot of different like strangers online. And I was in, sophomore year of high school, so I would have been like 14. And I just like, hey, I'm not playing anymore. I'm just gonna like deactivate my account. This is like just like a waste of time for me. I'm not enjoying it. And this man who I confirmed was like 40 years old just roasted me. He was just like, you finally I will never forget this line. It's like, you finally shown the true color of your belly, which is yellow. And it was just like, he was like a dude I was in this group with, and he just went to town on me for like at least 2 paragraphs. And he just like despicable, like, I can't believe you just like quit like this. And I was just like, bro, what? And then I was just like, okay, bye. And then he like a week and a half later, he like commented again, like broadly to the whole group. My friend was still playing, so he thought he was just like an apology to me. And I was just like, I don't care. What are you talking about? Insane. And I just like never, and I'll like, so that what I experienced, I was like, never again. I'll never be on the other side of that. I can never be that much of an ass to myself. I can never eat that much shit. I will never allow myself to do that.
That's great. Yeah, I feel like it probably does honestly affect people who play these the like online games and stuff. I don't really even do online games, but I did like when I was like a little kid, but I didn't really use the headsets and stuff. But you do hear like these people like getting mad at these people talking to them on their headset, and it's like, this person is like 10 years old and you're like 25. Like, what?
That's the thing. Mute and report and call it a day. Like, you don't have to engage. It's so much better. It's so much easier and better and does anything.
Yeah.
Like, I can't. Anytime you log in, it's like, thanks to your report, like a player has been like banned for a week. You're like, ooh, it feels good.
My block list on Twitter is so long, and I'm only trying to make it longer. Like, that's my biggest accomplishment, is just like blocking anyone. Like, anytime I see just like a bad opinion, I just immediately block. But it's like, there's no point in engage. Like, it goes back to what I was saying before. Like, these are not the type of people who I'm gonna be able to change their mind anyway. Like, I don't know who they are. They don't know who I am. So like, I don't want to see their opinion ever again. I don't care what they have to say. I'm not interested in talking to them. Like, just immediate block. Like, I'm not saying you need to block like everyone over like the tiniest thing, but you can block more people.
There's always another person to block.
Sucker born every day.
Oh my god. I mean, yeah, just don't engage with as few people as possible, and then you could probably cut a couple more off. That's the only editing you should encourage, is your own social circle.
Yeah, at least like, I don't know, just at least know who you're engaging with online. That's something, like, even if you don't know them personally, maybe like at least be able, if you don't feel confident knowing that this person is older than 12 years old, you just don't engage. Like,
as soon as there's an animated avatar, you just cut them off.
Well, that is it for the show this week.
You okay over there?
I was stretching. Shall we do that?
No, it's alright. No, we'll keep it. That's fine.
I don't know what that sounded like coming out.
Oh, you'll find out.
See the show notes. See the show notes for a link to view the artifacts for yourself.
Music for the podcast was produced by Nicholas Pizzuto.
Yeah, I mentioned this too, but the shows also have Endnotes now. For when we, fuck up, you can find the corrections in the end. Not that, I mean, like 100% are on Alex fucking up, but.
All right, relax. You said you invented minimum wage as minimum effort. Eat my butt. I gave you an out and you said, no, I made it up.
Rate us 5 stars on iTunes. Follow us on Facebook. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Or, whatever. I don't know. I mean, keep listening on the podcast, or if you're already on YouTube, just stay on there. But we do have a podcast on YouTube. And tell a friend or enemy about the show. Join us again whenever Alex feels like stop playing video games and doing some editing for once in his life.
I told you that in confidence.
As we find 2 new texts to discuss.
Justin, unfortunately, this will actually be my last podcast. I got the note back from the doctor. It's stage 4 windmill noise cancer. So, logging off. Good night and good luck, everybody.
Thank God.